So there was a process when you watched Hockey Night in Canada in the 1970s in Canada. It was Hockey Night in Canada shown in the States on those channels that go across the border. Anyway, you're in Canada. You get your bottle of pop ready. You get your chips. You get your maybe pizza or your hot dogs. You sit down. And this is what happens in the first 10 minutes. 10 minutes. When the Flyers would play Montreal or the Flyers would play Boston or the Flyers would play Toronto, Dave Shultz would either get a penalty or get in a fight with somebody. And then the color commentator, it could be in Brian McFarlane or Dick Irvin, saying, "Oh, Dave Shultz, in the rough stuff again." And it was always a picture of Dave Shultz in the penalty box, running his mouth, and either yelling at his players or the opposing players or the linesmen or referees. And he did that enough, he set the world record for the most penalty minutes by an NHL skater. And he... Tiger Williams had a lot of minutes, and Randy Holt and people like that. But this guy was also a scorer. He was a very talented guy. So when he wasn't in the penalty box, he was contributing to the 2 Stanley Cups for the Flyers, was protecting every player on the Flyers. And I don't think people were really intimidated by him. It's just the fact it was known that Dave Shultz was, as we like to say back in the day, an enforcer. So we're going to talk about the curious case and the many legends of Dave the Hammer Shultz. Now, this guy was so popular that the wrestler David Schultz really took his name sideways to promote his career. Now, David William Schultz, born October 14th, 1949, in Waldheim, Saskatchewan. A good Saskatchewan boy, as we like to say in the Don Cherry universe. Is currently a Canadian businessman, but played pro hockey for a number of seasons in the NHL and some in the minors. Now, he grew up in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, another beautiful community in the province, where hockey players grow like wheat, and the wheat is strong, and the wheat is tall, and the wheat is hardy, as we say. Now, he first came to major prominence with the Swift Current Broncos of the WCHL. Now, Swift Current, he put up some really good numbers. Best was his second season, where he scored 35 goals in 59 games. And he wasn't really a penalty king back then. His worst season was, again, 68, where he had 138 minutes in penalties. Now, he moved on to the Sorel Blackhawks of the MMJHL in 69 after playing with Swift Current, getting 34 points in 18 games. So there was no indication, although he was tough, he was going to be good-like. But, ladies and gentlemen, get this. He was never drafted. You would think a player putting up the numbers he had would draw a lot of attention. Where his enforcer role came in, he was playing for a very, very, nondescript team in the AHL called the Salem Rebels. Even though he played Quebec that season a few games, at Salem, ladies and gentlemen, he put up some really good totals. 69 points in 67 games, including 32 goals. But the fights began and didn't stop for the whole season. 356 minutes that year, ladies and gentlemen. That's almost 6 minutes a game. And another 23 minutes in the penalty. So the Flyers took notice. He played with the Quebec Aces parts of 2 seasons. Then ended up with the Flyers affiliate in Richmond, the AHL, where he put up some really bizarre numbers. 18 goals in 76 games, 392 minutes in penalties. And the question is, where did he find the time to score 18 goals? He had a cup of coffee with the Flyers in 72. 73, he was part of the Flyers, again, semifinal presence when he played Montreal in the Frozen Four. Now, how famous was Dave Schultz? Well, the movie Slapshot was inspired by a lot of this aggressive play back in the 70s. The opposing players that were featured that were out to get the Charlestown Chiefs kind of based impartially on Dave Schultz. But Dave Schultz, to my memory, wasn't a stick swinger. He was like a right and left hook swinger. Now, The Hammer had his best season with the Flyers in the very, very historic 74 season, where he had 36 points in that first cup run with 20 goals. 348 minutes in the sin bin, ladies and gentlemen. Now, by the time 75 came up, he broke the record again, 472 minutes in penalties, and another 83 in the playoffs. 555 minutes in penalties. Minors, majors, misconducts, all kind of stuff. Now, he eventually left Philadelphia, ended up with LA in 77, and usually what happened, teams would bring him as an enforcer. Eventually, he found his way to the Brian Spencer Pittsburgh Penguins in 78. He scored 34 points that season, then followed that up with some time with the Buffalo Sabres, and he was out of the league for good. Played his last professional games in Rochester in 1980. Now, Shultz was also a recording artist. He capitalized his popularity as a player when he recorded a local Philadelphia hit song called The Penalty Box in the mid-1970s, kind of a half rap. Now, his prowess scoring drew a lot of attention, especially in the 74 playoffs, where he scored a winning goal against the Flames in that series. Now, despite his successes, Shultz later expressed regret about his role as an enforcer and the prominence of fighting in hockey. Was he forced to fight? No, but the fact is he was Dave Shultz. And, hard-working, scrappy guy in Philadelphia. That's what the fans wanted. If he didn't need to fight, he wouldn't have fought. But the time the Cup run, I mean, he had so many enforcers on the team, it was scary. Look what it did to the Russians when he came in early 1976. Now, after injuring his wrist in a fight, Shultz just like to stick him with Biletnikoff in the NFL, he found a way to augment his skills. He once started putting on boxing wraps on his hands for protection. Now, as things usually went, Dave had several fights in the next few games while wearing the wraps. However, soon after, enforcers both the NHL and WHA shared this knowledge and started wearing similar hand protection. This was not to protect an already injured hand or wrist, but to prevent themselves from injury in a fight, because the wraps will do that. Now, soon after the trick became popular, both leagues passed laws that became known as the Shultz rule, thus banning the boxing wraps' temporary involvement in professional ice hockey. Now, after retiring as a player, Shultz coached several minor league teams over the next 2 decades, mostly secondary and minor pro. Now, he also wrote a book called The Hammer with Stan Fischler that provides insights in the world of a professional ice hockey enforcer. There was talk about this being a movie or a TV series, but didn't come to fruition. I still think it can be done. Now, he's also been involved in wrestling. He was a referee at the WCW Slamboree for a match between the Nasty Boys against Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan, who basically might be the bastard brothers of the Schultz. Now, again, 2 Stanley Cups, 74 and 75, and inducted in the Flyers Hall of Fame on November 6, 2019. And again, the record of 472 minutes might never be broken, because in the modern NHL, you're not fighting 7 times a game. You're lucky to see fights in the whole league 7 times a week. So, coaching record, squads including the New York Slapshots of the ACHL, the Madison Monsters of the COHL, the Baton Rouge Kingfish of the ECHL, the Mohawk Valley Prowlers of the UHL, and the Elmira Jackals of the UHL. Only one of these teams made the playoffs. It was Madison in 97 with 46 wins and 21 losses and 7 overtime losses, but they lost in the first round. So that's the story of David Shultz. Please give me a like, comment, or subscribe. Input is always welcome. But if you have a personal memory of Dave Shultz, please let us know, because some of the modern generation have no idea who this guy is, because with the modern era, where the fans are more interested in the pretty boys rather than the fighters. Dave Shultz, for me, the Dave Shultz was basically how, when he used to play Toronto, the Toronto players were never beaten up by Shultz. They were beaten up by Bridgman and Selesky and Crisp and the other goons, never Schultz, because maybe he was saving that for Boston or Montreal or whatever. But I don't remember him being a stick swinger. People are misnomer of that, and I don't think it was a stick swinger. Have a good day.